You ever walk into your own house and feel like a guest? That's what it felt like the night everything started to shift for me. I got home late, later than usual. One of our techs at the animal clinic had called in sick, so I pulled a double. It had been a brutal day. A bulldog with heat stroke, a golden retriever hit by a jet ski, and a couple who refused to pay after we saved their cat's life. I didn't even have time to eat. By the time I pulled into the driveway, all I wanted was a warm meal and the kind of quiet that feels safe, not hollow. But the house was silent. It should have smelled like something home-cooked, roasted garlic, maybe, or the chili Alyssa used to make when I had long days. Instead, it smelled like truffle oil and styrofoam containers. Another night of Uber Eats. Ty, I think. Again, I dropped my keys in the bowl and glanced around. The living room lights were dimmed, almost staged, like someone had walked through moments before showing. On the dining table were two unopened boxes with a designer logo I didn't recognize, but I didn't need to. I knew the brand just by the cost. Expensive. Another delivery. Another thing she'd probably wear once and toss aside. The kitchen was spotless, too spotless. Not in a just cleaned way. More like no one had touched it in days. The fruit bowl was decorative. The cutting board hadn't moved. Even the knives were still aligned in their magnetic strip like showroom props. And then there was Alyssa. She was lying across the white sectional, barefoot, with one leg lazily hooked over the armrest. Her tablet lit up her face in soft, sterile blue. She didn't look up when I walked in. Didn't ask about my day, didn't comment on the late hour, didn't even blink. Just another silent scroll. Like I was the help and not the man she once swore she couldn't live without. I stood there for a second longer than necessary, waiting, hoping for her to acknowledge me. Even a hey would have been enough. But nothing. So I walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and saw nothing but pressed juices, almond milk, and 3 bottles of white wine. No leftovers. No real food. Hey, I called out. My voice sounded too loud, like it didn't belong in that perfect little museum she called a home. Did you eat? A beet. 2. She didn't even look up. I had sushi earlier, she said finally. There's some rice left in the fridge, I think. Rice. From her takeout. Probably cold and stuck to the container. I didn't bother responding. Just grabbed a granola bar from the pantry. Her pantry, really, since I barely recognized half the brands, and made my way toward the hallway. My feet were sore, my stomach was turning, and I couldn't shake the weight pressing on my chest. This wasn't what I signed up for. When we first bought this house, it was supposed to be a dream. A little slice of peace in the Florida Keys. She had cried when we moved in. I still remember the way she clung to me in the doorway, telling me she couldn't believe we had made it, that she finally felt safe, seen, cherished. But somewhere along the way, the warmth disappeared. Now the house felt like a curated catalog page, beautiful but empty. Every pillow was fluffed, every orchid perfectly placed, every piece of furniture chosen for Instagram. Not comfort. It was like living in someone else's success story. And the worst part? I felt like I had funded the whole illusion with my exhaustion. As I got ready for bed that night, alone, since she now preferred falling asleep on the couch with her noise-canceling earbuds, I looked around the master bedroom. The silk sheets, she insisted on, were freezing. The air smelled like that lavender linen spray she ordered in bulk. Her vanity sparkled. Not a single thing out of place. Except me. I felt like clutter, like a misplaced item that didn't match the aesthetic. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to its low hum as it circled above me like a vulture. My body was worn out, but my mind wouldn't shut off. I couldn't stop thinking about how we got here, how the girl I used to laugh with at dive bars and slow dance within our crappy apartment had turned into someone I couldn't reach. This wasn't a marriage. Not anymore. It was starting to feel like a transaction. And for the first time since we said I do, I wondered if we were already past the point of no return. It's a strange thing, realizing your wife sees your marriage the way people see a Netflix account. Reliable, always on, and easy to forget about when something shinier comes along. But that's exactly what it started to feel like. The more I watched Alyssa live her days, the more obvious it became. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a lifestyle. A curated, frictionless life where everything ran perfectly behind the scenes, ideally without her having to lift a finger. She had it down to a system. Mondays were for facial appointments and Pilates. Tuesdays, brunch with that rotating carousel of friends she only ever referred to by first names. Wednesdays? Therapy, not for us, just her, though I'd bet my last dollar half the sessions were just venting about how tired she was. Not tired from work, of course. She hadn't held a job since our second year of marriage. Just tired from existing, I guess, from the burden of being pampered. Meanwhile, I was clocking 12 to 14-hour days at the clinic, covered in fur and sweat and occasionally worse. Emergencies don't wait. When a dog seizes in front of you or someone's elderly cat comes in gasping for breath, you don't check the clock. I used to tell myself it was worth it, that I was building something better for both of us. Alyssa didn't have much growing up, and I always thought that if I could just give her stability, a home, everything she never had, maybe that would be enough. But it turns out, giving someone a life they dreamed of doesn't mean they'll include you in the dream. I started noticing the small things first. She stopped waiting up for me. I'd come home late, hoping for some conversation, even a tired smile, and she'd be curled up with her tablet and noise-canceling headphones like she deliberately tuned me out of her world. The fridge? Stocked with overpriced juice cleanses and imported condiments I couldn't even pronounce. The laundry? Piled in the guest room or sent out to be handled. Our bed? Cold more often than not. Sex had turned into a chore, something she scheduled like a dentist appointment, and with just as much enthusiasm. Even our conversations changed. She didn't ask about my day anymore. Didn't want to hear about the little girl who cried after we saved her puppy or the senior couple who brought cookies for the clinic staff. I tried to share something meaningful, and she'd blink at me like I was buffering. She was always distracted, always scrolling, always halfway somewhere else. When she did talk to me, it was to ask for things. A new spa package she wanted to try. A yoga retreat in Sedona. Some crystal healer in Miami who realigned chakras through sound baths. I started to feel like a credit card with a beard. She called it self-care. I called it escapism. One night, I got home early, rare but it happened. I thought maybe we could sit on the porch like we used to. Drink some wine. Just talk. She had that look in her eyes when I walked in, the one she gave me when I interrupted a podcast. "You scare me," she said flatly. Didn't mean to. I thought maybe we could. Can we not tonight? I'm drained. From what? I wanted to ask. From brunch and pedicures? Instead, I nodded, grabbed a beer, and sat out on the porch alone, listening to the ocean in the distance and wondering how we became strangers. I realized I was trying to love someone who didn't see me anymore. She saw what I provided, what I kept running to keep afloat. But not me. It's like she thought I was obligated to give her everything because I had for so long. She acted like our life came pre-assembled, like the bills paid themselves, like I wasn't trading sleep and sanity for that damn waterfront view she posted all over Instagram. She'd found a way to turn our life into a subscription. Endless pampering, curated content, luxury delivered in branded boxes. And me? I was the unpaid employee behind a curtain. I remember standing in the shower one night, letting the water run too hot just to feel something and thinking, this isn't what I signed up for. This isn't marriage. This is customer service. And I was getting dangerously close to canceling her membership. I didn't plan it. Honestly, I didn't sit there plotting it out or fantasizing about taking control. It just happened quietly, without fanfare, on a Tuesday night when the air felt too thick and the silence in the house pressed against my skull like a vice. Alyssa was asleep in the king-size bed we barely shared anymore, sprawled out like she owned the damn mattress. She still had her sleep mask on, silk and monogrammed, of course, and one of her fancy candles was flickering on a nightstand. Something herbal, lavender, maybe. It should have been calming. It wasn't. I couldn't sleep. My body was buzzing, not with caffeine or stress, but something deeper. Resentment? Maybe. Or maybe just the kind of realization that doesn't need words. Something in me had just flipped. I walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of water, staring at the reflection of the fridge's LED panel. For some reason, I pulled out my phone and logged into our joint bank account. I don't know why I did it. Call it morbid curiosity. What I saw almost made me drop a glass. $14,000. Gone. In 8 weeks. All of it spent on things I never approved. Spa retreats, boutique shopping hauls, high-end food delivery, and a few charges that just read wellness experience, which I'm sure is code for bullshit with cucumber water. I just stood there for a long time, watching the numbers scroll by like I was looking at someone else's life. But it was mine, my money, my exhaustion, my sacrifice. She hadn't just tuned me out, she was draining me dry. I sat down at the table, hands shaking, and stared at the iPad we used to share for budgeting. I hadn't touched it in weeks. What was the point? She treated limits like suggestions, and me like the endless provider behind the curtain. But not anymore. I didn't rage. I didn't slam things or curse her name. I just opened the finance app and began removing her access. Credit cards? Revoked, except for one basic debit card tied to a weekly limit I set myself. Enough for groceries and gas. Not enough for her designer binges or avocado facials. I wasn't doing it to punish her. That's why I told myself, anyway. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. I deleted the auto-pay links to her spa memberships, unsubscribed from the boutique delivery services, and flagged every luxury purchase for review. It felt like I was pulling the emergency brake on a runaway train. By the time I was done, it was nearly 3 a.m. I walked back to the bedroom and stood in the doorway for a minute, watching her sleep. She looked peaceful, undisturbed. I couldn't remember the last time she looked at me that way. I laid down next to her, not close, just enough to feel the cold space between us. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was loaded, like the calm before a storm you know is coming but can't predict. In the morning, everything would change. I wasn't sure how she'd react, but I was done pretending. Done carrying the weight of a two-person life alone. Done being the engine of a marriage that had turned into a luxury cruise where I worked below deck and she sunbathed on the roof. She didn't know it yet, but her world was about to shift. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt ready. She found out the next morning. I was already gone by then. Left early for the clinic, didn't bother waking her. Didn't leave a note. Just let the silence do the talking. Around 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. A flurry of notifications from Alyssa. First a text. Jack, did you freeze my account? My card got declined at Juice Theory. Then another. Is this some kind of glitch, or? I didn't answer. Just silenced my phone and went back to prepping meds for a sick German Shepherd. 10 minutes later, another text came in. Jack, seriously, what the hell is going on? By noon, I had 2 missed calls and a voicemail I didn't need to listen to. I could already hear the tone in her voice. Shock, dressed up as righteous anger. By 2 p.m., she showed up at the clinic. In full war paint. Hair perfectly curled. Face layered with makeup that said, I am not unraveling, and those oversized sunglasses she wore when she wanted to feel powerful. She strutted through reception like she owned the place, ignoring the clients in the waiting room and beelining straight for the back. My assistant poked her head in, looking panicked. Your wife's here. Of course she is. I stepped out, still in my scrubs, latex gloves half pulled off, and met her just outside the treatment room. What the hell, Jack? She snapped, her voice low but venomous. I'm in the middle of work, I said calmly, nodding toward the room behind me. This isn't the time. She scoffed. You think this is normal? That you can just cut me off without even talking to me? I didn't flinch. I didn't cut you off. I left you the debit card. I just adjusted the spending to match reality. She blinked. That one hit her. She wasn't used to being told no, especially not by me. Reality? She repeated, incredulous. You humiliated me this morning. You embarrassed yourself, I said, finally taking off the gloves and folding them in my hand. Maybe try cooking a meal for once. There's food in the fridge. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the person standing in front of her. For a second, I didn't recognize myself either. I'd spent so long keeping the peace, brushing things off, telling myself she'd grow out of this phase. But it wasn't a phase. It was who she had chosen to become. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You didn't even give me a warning. You didn't give me one before draining 14 grand from our joint account, I said, deadpan. But sure, let's talk about fairness. Her jaw clenched. She wasn't used to me pushing back. You're being spiteful, she hissed. This is petty. I shook my head. No, Alyssa, what's petty is pretending this marriage is still working while you treat our house like a showroom and our finances like your private account. She fell silent, not because she agreed, but because she didn't have a comeback ready. My assistant peeked out again. Dr. Monroe? Sorry, urgent call from surgery. Saved by the vet tech. I turned to Alyssa. We'll talk later. Not here. She didn't move, didn't nod, just stood there, arms crossed, like a queen surveying damage to her kingdom. But her throne was already cracking. She left without another word, heels clicking sharply across the tile like a gavel being slammed. That night, she didn't speak to me, didn't cook, didn't ask questions. She just retreated to the guest room and closed the door. Over the next few days, her curated world kept unraveling. The grocery delivery was canceled. Spa membership declined. Her dry cleaning pickup? Not happening. The driver left a note saying the card on file was rejected. I found it on the counter, crumpled up. I watched her start to flail, not in some dramatic meltdown way. No, Alyssa didn't scream or cry. She simmered, quietly, coldly, like a queen realizing the peasants weren't showing up for her parade. She started doing small chores, which, in our house, might as well have been a state of emergency. I came home one evening to find her folding laundry, wrong of course, and standing awkwardly in the kitchen, like she'd forgotten where we kept the cutting boards. It wasn't guilt. It was survival. She thought if she performed domesticity just enough, I'd reverse course. That I'd fall back into my role, the dependable husband who overworked and underreacted. But something in me had shifted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't engage. I just let her feel the limits for once. No explanations. No second talk. No comfort. For the first time in our marriage, she had to learn what it felt like to live inside the very house she'd built, with no one else holding it up. The strange thing about pulling away from someone is how quiet it is. There's no dramatic snap, no shouting, no final blow, just a slow fade, like turning down the volume on a song you used to love. That's what it was like watching Alyssa unravel. Not from poverty, God no. We weren't anywhere near broke. But from something she feared more than anything, limits. The invisible walls I had finally built around my time, my money, my energy. She didn't take it well. First came the confusion, then the silent treatment, then the sudden flurry of effort that felt less like love and more like PR damage control. She started pulling old clothes from the back of the closet, the ones she used to wear before everything got upgraded. Her designer shoes stayed boxed. The online orders stopped showing up. I think her friends started noticing, too. The invitations dried up. Or maybe she just stopped pretending to enjoy them. I come home to find her cooking badly. Boiled pasta with no salt. Chicken that somehow tasted like regret. She never asked for help. Never admitted anything had changed. She just hovered, waiting to be noticed. Sometimes she'd fold my laundry and leave it stacked too neatly on the bed. Other times, she'd offer to pick up groceries, pausing just long enough before asking, "Can I use the debit?" It wasn't humility. It was survival instinct. The lifestyle she'd built had a new gatekeeper now, and it wasn't her. I said very little through all of it. Not to punish her, though I won't lie, it did feel sharp in a clean sort of way, like slicing through something tangled. But more than anything, I was just tired. Tired of making speeches. Tired of trying to explain that love isn't endless funding. That a marriage isn't a service plan you renew whenever it suits you. And somewhere in all that silence, I think she started to see it. One night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table. No makeup, no curated outfit. Just one of my old college hoodies and a blank stare. The candle between us flickered weakly, like it knew the performance was over. She didn't cry, didn't make a speech. She just said, "I'm trying." And for the first time, I didn't rush to reassure her. Didn't reach for her hand or offer some Hallmark platitude. I just nodded and said, "Okay," because that's all there was left to say. She did start trying, in her own half-hearted way. She cooked more. She cleaned, kind of. She even brought home takeout once, like it was a peace offering. But everything felt performative. Not cruel, not manipulative, just empty. Like she was playing a version of herself she couldn't commit to. And I couldn't unfeel what I'd felt. I couldn't unsee the way she'd lived so comfortably without me. how she'd turn me into background noise while she chased a lifestyle that was always just a little shinier, a little more curated, a little less us. So one morning, before she woke up, I started packing her things. Not all of them, just the essentials. The high heels she never wore anymore, the handbags that once defined her, the perfumes that all smelled like hotel lobbies. I put them in black duffel bags, one after another. No ceremony, no note. She came downstairs around 9. I was at the dining table, sipping my coffee. She saw the bags. Her face tightened. "What is this?" "You're leaving today," I said, without even raising my voice. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "You're serious." "I've been serious," I said. "You just haven't been listening." She didn't cry. That surprised me. Maybe she knew it was coming. Maybe she just run out of tears. An hour later, her friend pulled up in a white SUV, and Alyssa wheeled the bags out without a word. She didn't say goodbye, didn't ask for one more chance, just closed the door behind her. And this time, the silence she left behind didn't sting. It felt clean, final. I spent the rest of the day putting the house back together, my way. Took down the wedding photos, cleared the vanity of products I couldn't pronounce. I moved the furniture around, not for function, just to make it mine again. That night, I stood barefoot in the kitchen, sipping whiskey with the windows open. No curated playlist, no designer candles, just the sound of wind moving through the palms. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt free.